How many of us have been warned about the terrible twos? But then how many of us found out that there was no magic switch when they turned 3? And then by the time they're turning 4, we're kind of wondering if this difficult phase is just going to connect to their teenage years. Hi, Christy here with Mom's Fine Truth. And I believe that the issue that we face is the definition that we have put with phase. My child's going through a phase. Because the definition that we've put with it has determined that it's going to be very temporary and that it's just this inevitable thing that happens based on often their age. They go through phases of sleep regression as they turn 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, quite often, really, for those first couple of years. And they go through behavioral phases. Again, the biggest one being focused on when they're 2 years old. So much so that I would say it's uncommon for people to think of my child's turning 2 without also associating it with, oh my goodness, here we go into the terrible twos. But it's said to be the terrible twos because the assumption is it's a phase that will be temporary. So it started out of our control and it ends whenever it's ready to be done, and it's temporary. You just kind of have to sit back and bear it. But what if that is a faulty definition? What if the phase is waiting for us to end it? Or what if in some instances, the phase didn't have to start at all? See, once we put a question mark on that definition, it opens up a whole realm of possibilities here. So let's dive into that. Now, one type of phase that I believe is, we can put the question mark next to, but I do believe fits into our normal definition, is sleep regression. Because they have found that sleep regression, like the 4 months and 6 months and 8 months and whatever, that the baby is the way their body is sleeping, the depth to which they're sleeping, the length of time they can sleep, it's changing and maturing. And basically their bodies are just having to get used to a whole new way of sleeping. And that's just going to take a minute. Now, I think there are some things we can do to aid them in that, aid them in getting used to this new way. But there is no way, if your child does not change to a new way of sleeping, that's problematic because they're supposed to be maturing in the way they sleep. Now, some kids struggle more than others, but if a child struggles, again, there might be things we can do to help. But to some level, it's going to start, and the child's going to have to work through it and get used to this new way of sleeping. And so to a certain extent, we have to sit back and take it. So that is the why behind sleep regressions. But what is the why behind the terrible twos? For the most part, I believe that it is the maturing, which leads to them having a greater understanding of what's going on around them, of what options are open to them, which causes them to push boundaries, all the boundaries, and then have to realize what is acceptable and what is not. So they're not malicious. They're not trying to make your life miserable. They're thinking more. They're comprehending more, understanding more, and wanting to see, what can I do? What new things can I try? What new things can I learn? What happens if I don't listen to mom and dad? Let's figure it out. And they're going to push. They're going to experiment. They're going to try. And so it's our job to now show them, I see that you're learning and growing and experimenting, but these are still the boundaries. And this is where we need to stay. So I want to help you learn and grow and try new things, but these are they need to be within these boundaries. of what's right and wrong, of what's obedience and disobedience. So the flip side of that is that if we realize, oh my goodness, my child's testing, my child's pushing, this must be the terrible twos. All right, just buckle down and take it. If we step back and just take it, they're going to be pushing and experimenting and testing the boundaries. And if we are being more sit in the back seat and ride this ride on through, they're not going to be getting the memo of what's acceptable and not acceptable, what's obedient and not disobedient, what they can continue to do versus what they should not do again. They're going to be getting the memos that what they're doing right now in pushing past the boundaries, in not listening, in whatever frustrating behavior is coming out, they're going to be getting the memo that that's okay. It might not make mommy and daddy happy, but it's still an option on the table that I can keep pursuing. And they're also going to be getting the memo that, well, if I can push these boundaries, then I can push more. And honestly, it's most likely going to escalate from there. And you might be saying, well, I mean, even though my child has entered the terrible twos and beyond, it's not like I never draw a line anymore. Okay, but what we need to really think about is, are we truly being consistent? Or are we just taking it, bearing down and taking it, and then when it's just it's just gone too far, then we come down. Then we draw a line. Maybe in frustration, maybe in a reactionary way, but not in a consistent way. And I'm not trying to tell you what you're doing, but this is a trend that I often see because of the mentality that this is just a phase. It's just a phase. I just need to buckle down and take it. It will end. As long as I can get through this phase, we're good. And so it's kind of like we decide to set this season of their life in a different category. And so we let go of the standards that we were upholding because we're just going to pause, let them get through this, and then we'll implement again. But what we have to understand is every time we don't stress consistency, every time we don't enforce a boundary, they're taking that as, oh, I just pushed through this boundary. Nothing pushed back. So that's a boundary I'm going to keep working on. And I actually talk more about the importance of consistency, but also what we need to do in addition to consistency in a video link down below. Now, I go back to this in a lot of the videos I make, but our biggest job as parents is to emulate Christ, to be an example of Christ in the lives of our children. And Christ, one of Christ's best features is his absolute consistency. In his commands, in his promises throughout the Bible, in our lives, always consistent. And that is exactly what we need to be for our children, no matter what age they are, no matter what boundaries they're testing, no matter what phase they're in. We need to be that absolute consistency so that every time they test the boundary, they are immediately faced with loving, firm consistency. So that as their minds are growing and maturing and they're naturally testing, we are helping them to learn to respect what's right and wrong, to respect authority, the love and consistency of Christ, safety and security, how to behave in life, in their relationship with Christ, in their interaction with people. We are consistently showing them the boundaries there. This is the only way that they can truly learn respect for authority and obedience to Christ. So at this point, maybe you're saying, okay, sounds all good and fine, but it's a lot easier said than done. I hear you. And I believe, especially if you're experiencing the terrible twos and beyond right now, You're exhausted. I'm going to predict that you're exhausted physically, but also emotionally. You've been riding this ride, and it's a rough ride sometimes for a little while now, and you're tired. And that's why I believe that the first step is to take care of mommy. And the two ways to do that is to, one, spend time with Jesus. No matter how tired we are, that is going to lift us up. That is going to motivate us. No matter how overwhelmed we are, that is going to center us and have us focus on what truly matters. And no matter how much we feel like we just can't do anything right with our kids, spending time with Jesus is going to give us all the wisdom that we need. And then step number 2 of taking care of mommy is getting rest. And the same applies to daddy. And that seems like a far-fetched idea probably to you right now. Because if you're watching this video, you probably have a very young child. And society today has decided that those with young children will not be rested. They will be sleep deprived. And that is incredibly faulty, or at least it does not have to be true. It should not be true. And it's a very damaging idea. Because not only is it horrible for our physical bodies to have go through years of being sleep deprived, but it's also horrible for our relationships, our family, our home, because we cannot give half of what we should be able to when we're consistently deprived of sleep. So I'm on a mission to get mommies well rested. So I created a completely free masterclass, The Rested Mommy, where I spend an hour walking you through exactly how I lay out my home so that my husband and I are the ones who determine when and how long our children sleep and how we've trained them to get a full night's sleep, which then allows us to decide how much sleep we get so that everyone in our home is well rested and set up well for the next day, which whether you're a mommy or daddy or a 2-year-old or beyond, being well rested is going to set you up better for the next day. So there's a link below. Sign up today. It's completely free. So step number 1 is take care of mommy. Step number 2 is focusing on consistency. So again, I want to point you to a video that should be popping up here on the screen where I dive deeper into all the ways that we can be consistent and what that truly looks like when it plays out in our lives. All right, well, that's all I've got for today. But remember, I'm always here if you need me. Bye.